All right, let's talk about something that is, no joke, the bedrock of your future legal career. Getting a handle on the IIE Law Referencing Guide for 2026. And look, this isn't just about ticking boxes for your assignments. This is about learning the fundamental skill of building a solid, verifiable, and ethical argument. The kind that actually wins cases and builds a reputation you can be proud of.
And let's get one thing straight right from the jump. The stakes are incredibly high. The guide itself doesn't pull any punches. Failing to reference isn't just a simple slip-up. It's straight-up plagiarism. And an allegation like that, it can be, and I'm quoting here, detrimental to a legal career. So this is way more than just about your grades. It's about your professional integrity starting right now.
So here's our game plan. We're going to break this all down into 6 manageable chunks. We'll kick things off with the big why this matters so much. Then we'll get into the mechanics of footnotes and reference lists. After that, we'll dive deep into citing legal authorities, academic sources, and of course tackle the very modern challenge of AI. And we'll wrap it all up with a handy checklist.
Okay, so let's start with that foundational question. Why is this so crucial? Seriously, it's not just about dodging penalties. Think of it this way. Proper referencing is your first real test. It's you showing that you can uphold the ethical standards of the profession you're about to enter.
And the IIE policy on this is crystal clear. Plagiarism isn't just about copy-pasting. The key word to focus on here is impression. If your work gives off the impression that someone else's idea is your own, even accidentally, you've crossed a serious line. That's the core idea you really need to get.
And, it's even bigger than just plagiarism. The guide is super explicit. Any kind of academic dishonesty, and that includes misusing AI, is considered cheating. This isn't just breaking a rule in a handbook. It's a serious breach of ethics that can really damage your legal career before you even get started.
So how do we actually put this all into practice? Well, the IIE system is basically built on 2 pillars that have to work together. You've got your footnotes in the text, and you've got your reference list at the end.
And this slide shows you exactly what I mean. Think of the footnote on the left as a quick little signpost. It just points and says, hey, this specific idea came from page 134 of this book. But the reference list on the right, that's the full treasure map. It gives your reader every single detail they need to go find that exact book on their own. One points, the other gives the full address.
And this right here, this is the golden rule. The one thing you absolutely cannot forget. The guide is so clear on this. For any open book assessment, you have to have both footnotes and a final reference list. If you're missing either one, it's considered an automatic plagiarism offense. Yep, it's that serious. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We'll start with the absolute bedrock of any legal argument, legislation and case law. These are your primary authorities, and you have to cite them with absolute precision. There's just no room for error here. Citing legislation is actually pretty straightforward. It's a simple pattern. You introduce it fully the first time, and then you use an abbreviation. So the first time you mention an act, you use its full title and you pop an abbreviation in brackets. After that, you're good to just use the abbreviation. The key thing to remember, though, is that the footnote always gets the full formal name. Oh, and there's one special case, the Constitution. You never use an act number for it.
Now, have a look at this. This is a perfect example of how you introduce a case. See how in the main text, the full case name is written out, and then a shorter name, Grootboom, is established in brackets? That's so you can use the short name later. Then you look down at the footnote, and there it is, the complete, formal citation. No guesswork needed.
This table really shows you the pattern nice and clearly. Notice that the first footnote and the final reference list entry, they're exactly the same. They both give the full citation. The only time it changes is for later footnotes where you can add what's called a pinpoint to send your reader to a very specific page or paragraph in that case. So what happens when you're dealing with a case that's so new it's not even in the official reports yet? Well, the principle is exactly the same. You have to give your reader a clear path to find it. If it's unreported, you give the judgment date. If you can only find it online, you have to use its neutral citation and include the URL and the date you accessed it. But remember, the second a reported version comes out, you have to switch over to that official citation.
Okay, so we've covered the primary legal stuff, but your arguments are also going to be built on the amazing work of legal scholars. You're going to be standing on the shoulders of giants. And this next bit is all about how you give them the proper credit when you're using their books and journal articles.
When you're citing a book, just remember this simple little progression: full, abridged, and complete.
Your very first footnote has all the full details. Any footnotes after that use a shorter, abridged version, just the first author's name, the title, and the new page number. And then finally, your entry in the reference list is the most complete version of all, because that's where you add the publisher and the place of publication.
Journal articles follow a really similar pattern, but you gotta watch the formatting. Notice the little differences? The article's title is in quotation marks, but the name of the journal itself is in italics. And the subsequent footnote is super short, just the author, the year, the journal, and the specific page you're talking about.
All right, let's talk about something that's a huge deal for modern students. How do we use digital tools, and specifically generative AI, properly and ethically in our legal writing?
So, this is the big question on everyone's mind, right? And the IIE guide faces it head-on. The answer isn't a simple yes or no. It's really a policy that's all about responsible and, most importantly, ethical use.
So, the guide does permit using AI, but only for secondary stuff, like helping you organize your ideas or maybe clean up your language. But, and this is a huge but, it comes with a massive warning. You, and only you, are responsible for the accuracy and originality of your work. Every single fact, every citation, has to be checked and verified by you.
And this right here is the absolute red line you cannot cross. Let me be perfectly clear. You cannot, under any circumstances, cite ChatGPT as if it were a court case, a law, or a textbook. It is not a legal or academic source. It's a tool. That's it. And if you try to pass it off as an authority, that is a major, major form of academic misconduct.
Because of that, if you use AI for one of those permitted reasons, the guide says you have to be totally transparent in two ways. First, you put a general acknowledgement right at the start of your work. But second, and this is crucial, if you use any output from the AI, even if you rephrase it, you have to cite that specific output in both a footnote and in your reference list, just like any other source.
Whew. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. The principles, the formats, all of it. So to bring this all home, let's just run through a quick final checklist you can use every single time before you submit something to make sure you're on the right track.
Seriously, before you hit that submit button, just ask yourself these questions. Do I have both footnotes and a reference list? Check. Is every single source I mentioned in my essay also in a footnote? Check. Is everything in my footnotes also in my reference list? Check. Are my first references full and the later ones shorter? What about that tiny detail? Are my footnote numbers after the punctuation? And finally, was I totally honest about any AI I used? This little checklist can save you from a world of trouble. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Referencing is so much more than just a chore you have to do for an assignment. It's a direct demonstration of your character as a future legal professional. It shows that you're meticulous, you're ethical, and that you respect the very foundations of the law. Your legal reputation literally starts being built today with your very next footnote.